Everybody, JJ back here again, coffee in hand, ready to talk about another album. It's no secret at this point, if you watched any of my other videos, I am a child of the 80s and my music taste follows suit. And one of the most ubiquitous artists of the 80s, Ozzy Osbourne. And I'm going to talk about another album in a second that's also another Ozzy Osbourne project, but I wanted to talk about the solo career of Ozzy first, because believe it or not, that is kind of my first exposure to Ozzy. Being, of the early 80s and, getting into music at the end of the 80s and stuff, it was more Ozzy's solo career. That kind of I heard more of. Black Sabbath clearly is Ozzy's original band, and they had a long career. Well over like 1970, 1969 is Paranoid, and or the first album from Black Sabbath, and it's a long tenure to have, and then. By the time I kind of discovered Ozzy, he felt like a new artist, but he had been already, almost into a 20-year career at that point. And there was likely at some point, because the radio was always on when I was growing up, I got exposed to a lot of music via the radio. Remember the radio, kids? Yeah. So a song probably like Crazy Train. You couldn't get away from that song in the 80s, and that was, amazing song. It's just incredible, the riff and all that stuff. And it's by the time I was getting into Ozzy, it was already, towards the end of the 80s. And one of my favorite movies growing up is it's a huge 80s cheese fest with Charlie Sheen. I saw an interview recently with Charlie Sheen where he's embarrassed by it. I have no idea why, because this movie is a huge cult following and it's awesome. It's called The Wraith. W-R-A-I-T-H. Wraith, like a ghost. And, it's about this, I don't have to give you the synopsis of the movie, but anyways, it's awesome. I love that movie. I still watch it to this day and have a good time. But one of my first exposures to Ozzy comes via that movie. I had a VHS, or somebody in my family had a VHS copy or taped it off television or cable or something. And the soundtrack to that movie is quite amazing. And it's definitely a little time capsule of the 80s and, the artists and stuff. White Lion and Tim Feehan and people like that, and Ozzy happened to have a song on there, and the song comes from his solo album. Sorry for the glare. The Ultimate Sin, and the song that is on The Wraith, the soundtrack, is Secret Loser, and that song is like the kind of catalyst for me. I associated it with the movie that I loved. The song is great, has a great high energy to it and things like that. So when I started getting CDs and buying music with my own money and things, when I found out that Secret Loser was on this album, I was, this was the one I had to get. Forget about Crazy Train and Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. What? Who cares? The Ultimate Sin was the one that I needed, and so ended up getting that on CD. And so this copy, I should say, I have 2 copies of this album, and the CD is long gone by this time, but I still have. I inherited both of these from my one of my older brother's record collection. So this I opened up not that long ago. This was an original sealed one from 1986, and just figured, what the heck, I wanted to listen to it. The other one I had was kind of skipped and well loved by all means. It's a great record. I listened to it a lot, but it was time to get out a fresh new copy of it. So that's why the glare is so terrible, unless it still has the original shrink wrap from when it was brand new. But yeah, I've been listening to this, and there's so many great songs on this. Ozzy, for some reason, hates this album. and does not talk fondly about it. And I have no idea why, because I really feel like that of the fans of Ozzy, that this is such a great album. The song that everyone would know off of this album is one of Ozzy's biggest hits, "Shot in the Dark." And that was all over MTV and all over music video platforms and on the radio. It was a big hit, and it's just it blows me away that he doesn't like this album. And I'm not even sure as to the reason why anymore. Whether it's the association with the people that he was playing with at this time. This album comes post Randy Rhoads' death. And so after that, I don't remember the exact lineage, but Jakey Lee steps in to fill Randy Rhoads' shoes and does quite an admirable job. Jakey is responsible for writing some of Ozzy's the biggest hits. And definitely, like, this album just has, like, it's so solid from front to back. Killer of Giants is another great song. Shot in the Dark, I've mentioned. The Ultimate Sin is amazing. Secret Loser. The production on this is amazing. Randy Castillo, who, White Tama drums is another big influence of mine. Seeing him, in the, there was a concert where Ozzy performed in Moscow. And you could see Randy's, his lightning bolt white Tama drum set. It's he's not famous in the famous of annals of drummers, but it was quite a recognizable drum kit. He was trying to come up, probably with like a signature pattern, like what Randy Rhoads had with the polka dots on the white guitar. Randy came up with a design on drums that was very similar. And Randy's no longer alive. And he's greatly missed. A great drummer, played in Motley Crue for a while. Really solid rock drummer, and from what I read about him, he was a great guy as well too. Very well regarded musician. But yeah, I would love to actually, now that I'm thinking of it, dig more into that. Why this album is so derided by Ozzy himself. I'm gonna guess it's probably just the the era of what he was going through maybe, and he doesn't associate good times with this. If you think about the lineage of what this record has behind it and the history that's there, Ozzy, is quite well known, obviously, for bringing bands, being one of the main guys who would bring opening, kind of like burgeoning artists with him out on tour to give them exposure. He was very good at passing the torch to a new generation, and maybe him and Sharon, his wife, from the management side of things, understood that to ingratiate with a new, younger audience, Ozzy needed those young acts in order to keep him going post Black Sabbath and get out of the nostalgia of being a legacy act and still maintaining himself as a current relevant artist. And 1986, there is a tour that happens, and a little band called Metallica opens for Ozzy off of this record. And, so this one, the significance of this release and the tour that was behind it, and the stage show was really cool for this as well. There's not a ton of pictures available for what the stage show was, but it was a very cool production. The artwork that's behind this, I mean, like, it's so iconic. I've spent hours looking at this album cover and just taking this in. And I have no idea who the artist is. It says Boris. I mean, who's Boris? I mean, look how Boris is. I'll find it somewhere. But just insanely amazing artwork. It evoked so much, like, imagery and just, just you could look at album covers like this and just kind of your imagination, could run wild. And yeah, there's a lineup of the band. There you go. There's a bunch of guys from the 80s I've ever saw them, complete with a ruffled pirate shirt. Who is that? I don't recognize who that is. Is that Jakey? Doesn't matter who it is. One of the guys is wearing a pirate shirt. So if you watch Seinfeld, you know the reference I'm talking about, the ruffled pirate shirt. But anyways, regardless of what these guys look like, The music is top notch, and yeah, just you know, as far as Ozzy albums goes, there's definitely more fan favorite ones, but as far as you know, my memory of Ozzy and where you know the beginnings of enjoying him as a solo artist come from, the song "Secret Loser" from one of my favorite movies, and then tying it into this album. And then all the other cool stuff that's associated with this album, the tour and the artwork, and yeah, if I felt like talking about this album first from Ozzy because I think this is kind of a bit of a forgotten gem. I hope it's not. I hope I'm wrong there. But you know, I talked to a lot of friends in music and stuff, and this one is just kind of like it's always under the radar. It never gets the same love as Blizzard or Diary of a Madman, and I'm never sure why. Shot in the Dark might have been at least as big a hit, or possibly even bigger than some of the other hits from the earlier records. So, but yeah, this is a killer album. It is a product of its time. It's 80s through and through and through. But if you like the 80s, you'll dig this one. So this is the one about the ultimate sin from Ozzy. No last name needed. Cheers.